What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. The officially not going dancing, right? And it still feels weird as a Badger fan to not be in the dance. Does that make this season a failure? Let's talk about it and more on today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether you're watching live right now with us, which is amazing. If you're on YouTube tomorrow, checking it out. If you're on the pod driving to work, I appreciate all y'all so much for tuning in and just continuing to build this channel. So thank you for that. Your team every single day. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. Let's talk about it. So for the second time in essentially my fandom, and just so everyone kind of knows where I'm at, I really started watching and coming into being a Badger fan at an incredible time, right when basketball was getting good, football was turning the corner. So I don't really have memories outside of the one fluke. I shouldn't say fluke year. I mean the COVID year where nobody got to dance, and then you had the Brad Davidson freshman season where they didn't go to the dance. Aside from that, every year I've been in March Madness. I've filled up my bracket. Wisconsin's gone all the way every single year because that's what I do, right? I start my bracket by filling in Wisconsin into the championship game. They're not going this year. And I don't think any of us are surprised by it, but it still kind of stinks, right? I was still hoping because I'm still hoping that they got in somehow, right? But they did not. They didn't deserve it for start. Like they did not deserve it. So, yeah, not going to March. Does that make this season a failure? Yes. Right? And I think you can say that honestly, even as a person who doesn't think Greg Gard should be fired. I don't even think he should really be on a crazy hot seat. But if you don't go to March, if you don't go to the dance as Wisconsin, it's still a failure of a season, period. Right? I mean, to me, it's a complete failure of a season because of the standard that's set here. Now, that doesn't mean a failure of a season, in my opinion, doesn't mean that you clean house. It doesn't mean that the coaches need to be fired and you need to start over. But what you can't do, in my opinion, is you can't stack failures on top of each other. Right? You can't have another one of these years next year. So if you look at the streak of the all-time or the active March Madness streaks right now, like the teams that have the longest streaks, there's 3 schools with 20-plus active streaks for March Madness. That's it. And North Carolina's not in that mix. Duke isn't in that mix. So my point is it's really hard to go every year. It should still be a failure for Wisconsin if you don't go that year, but you're not going to go every year, okay? Like I said, though, you can't stack those. You can't have multiple years like that now. Now, Greg Gard needs to go into this offseason. He needs to fix it. We're still waiting. The NIT selection show hasn't happened yet, so we're waiting on that to happen. Excuse me. I assume the Badgers will be in that field. I also would be surprised if they were invited, if they wouldn't accept it. I got a bunch of comments on NIT stuff that we're going to get to in this show. I already see them popping in. I really appreciate everybody for that. I'm going to give my thoughts on the NIT, but I want to kind of go back to this year and really kind of wrap up this year and talk about not getting in the tournament. Does anybody think it's not a failure? Does anybody think this was just a rebuilding year? And because it's a rebuilding year, it's okay if you don't make the tournament. Again, this was a team picked to finish 12th to 9th in the Big Ten to start this year. And that's basically, I mean, we kind of hit that mark, right? I guess we didn't overachieve that mark. Maybe we underachieved a little bit, but this is kind of who national prognosticators thought we would be. They thought rebuilding year, Davis is gone, a bunch of players transferred. It's a young team, rebuilding year. That's essentially what it was. Now, a rebuilding year, if you're going to frame it as that, has to lead into something, right? It can't be a rebuilding year and then the next year nothing's built, right? If you think of like construction projects, rebuilding is you reset the foundation. Well, next year you darn well better be putting windows and walls and doors on and painting, right? You can't be still building the foundation next year at Wisconsin. That's fair or not. The standard at this university is very high, and you can't stack failure. Is where I'm at. So I've said it before. I'm not changing course. About a month and a half ago, I said this season is what it is. It's not going to be a successful season. It's just not. And I think Greg Gard is going to have to address things in the offseason, and I tend to believe he will. That's where I'm at. I tend to believe he will, But if he doesn't, he's going to find himself on the hot seat very quickly because Chris McIntosh has set the expectation for Wisconsin, right? And that expectation is it's championship competition. It's playing up to a certain level that's been established for this program. So I'm very interested here. I'm going to get some of your comments, get into some of this. Again, it's a failure of a year. I don't think that necessarily equates to you need to blow up the program and you need to fire Greg Gard. I think if you look at the landscape of college basketball, every single program outside of Gonzaga, I think Michigan State and Kansas, every single elite program outside of those three has missed March Madness recently. So it's not the death knell to have a down year, but you darn well better correct it. Okay, let's keep going here. Let's talk some NIT. So Tyler Strieber says, looks like UW is going to accept an NIT bid. That's a mistake. Unnecessary injury risk sends the wrong message to the program. Equivalent of a participation trophy. Shaking my head. Tyler, thanks for the comment. I honestly had really not thought about the injury risk, and I probably should have. That's an interesting one, right? If somebody, every time you play, like, I don't love the argument. People will say, well, every time you can't worry so much about risk. Every time you play basketball, there's a risk of injury. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean you should just play unnecessary games, right? That does increase the injury risk. If there was a catastrophic injury to a guy like an Asian, like an ACL, he's not going to play next year at this point. So to me, that's not enough of a risk not to play it, but I think that's a valid concern. I wouldn't just throw that away. In terms of an equivalent, participation trophy, sure. But potentially gives you a chance to build some momentum going into the offseason. Maybe you can work on some things with a Sejan defensively where he can do some things that you're trying to get him ready for next year. Like, it's an opportunity to get some young guys more reps potentially, so I think that's where I would lean towards, is getting the young guys a little more reps potentially. Connor Sejan, work on some stuff defensively. Maybe it gives you an opportunity to try some new things, right? That you've been wanting to do, but you've been so under pressure of making March Madness, you haven't been able to experiment. Like, you've just been grinding everything to a halt. Maybe the NIT allows you to do a few different things, nothing drastic. Like, Greg Gard's not going to change anything drastically, but maybe you can tweak a few things to see how it would look for next year in games that really don't mean much. And that's why I would say go to the NIT, right? But I don't know if Greg Gard would approach it with that mindset. And that's the part that would be nervous with me. Tyler Strieber goes on to say, if Sejan blows an ACL in any of these games, people are going to be pissed. Yeah. Like, it would be the equivalent, right, of, the World Baseball Classic and your number one starter goes there and he rips up his elbow pitching in a game that doesn't mean anything to your major league team. It would be something like that. It'd be really frustrating. No doubt there, Tyler. Brian Sukala, sorry. NIT is a spot where you get younger players some experience, which we lacked all year. I love that idea. Would Greg Gard approach the NIT that way? I don't think he would, right? I think he would play it how they played it this whole season, which would be, really lean on Chucky, Crowell, Tyler Wall. I would love that to be an opportunity to try out Kamari McGee playing more point guard, Chucky a little more off ball. I would love to have the opportunity to maybe put Connor in a couple pick and roll situations and see how he handles it as a secondary playmaker. I would love to have that opportunity to get Ilver, Hodges some reps, right? Maybe 5-10 minutes a game. But would Greg Gard approach it that way? I really doubt it. Like, I just don't think that's his makeup, for better or worse. So I'm right with you there, Brian, in terms of the NIT being a kind of a sandbox where you could go in and experiment a little bit. I don't think Gard would approach it that way, which makes the NIT a little less appealing to me. But that's where I'm at on that one. Cheld kind of agrees with me. I think they were just going to go and try to win it, so they probably won't be playing any differently. Now, again, it wouldn't be fair to expect drastic changes, but could he just tweak things a little bit in the NIT? That's where I would like to see it go, but we'll have to see. It's not guaranteed we're in yet, by the way. That selection show hasn't happened yet. I think it's likely we would get an invite based on where we finish, but we may not even get into the NIT. So we'll maybe cross that bridge when we get there. I'm very curious. I am very, very curious how Badger fans would approach that. Like, how excited would you be for those games? Are you a fan that every time the Badgers are playing, no matter what, like, you're in the living room, you got the wings and the beer and you're excited for it? Or would the NIT for a lot of you just be an opportunity to be like, I'm going to go do some errands, I'm very curious to see where you're at on that one. All right. We're going to geek in all your comments. I want to talk a little bit as well about the roster building mistakes and recruiting classes that went into building this team with very little depth. Talk about that a little bit coming up on Locked On Badgers. But first, we need to talk about one of our friends of the show, the very, very underrated and incredibly tasting Built Bars. March Madness is here. The Built March Madness bracket is here. We know you have a favorite bar or puff. Now's the time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com. Vote for your favorites. You know I'll be voting for coconut marshmallow. I love coconut marshmallow. So if you want to vote for your favorite Built Bar, go and support your team, support our bar, your favorite puff from Built Bar. And when you're there, your favorite bar will be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get one free bar or one free box of Built Bars. Not only that, but one Locked On fan. This is where it gets good. One Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription of Built to have Built Bars, best bars and puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. They are incredible. You got to try Built, the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're amazing. You won't think they're that good for you. What makes Built Bars so good? For starters, high in protein, low in sugar, 100% real chocolate. Run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now. Vote for your favorite bar or puff. Pick up the box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. When you're done here, go grab your bracket. Go listen to Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown, national analysis, and insight from our local experts. The Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown is everything you need to make the most informed decisions on your brackets. Find the episode on Locked On College Basketball wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. All right, let's keep it going here. Bunch more comments I want to get to. I also want to really quickly look back because the depth on this team, and you all know this, right? Yeah, I'm no smarter than any of you when it comes to this. The depth on this team has been lacking for 2 years now. And we talked about it. That's on Greg Gard, period. End. Stop. Full stop. Right? That's on the head coach of the program, the CEO of the program. It's on Greg Gard. He has to fix it. Well, what has gone into this? Why has there been so little depth the last 2 years, right? Go ahead, look back at recruiting, what we've done since 2018. You look at that 2018 class, Taylor Curry, Joe Hedstrom, Ty Strickland. Those guys would theoretically be redshirt seniors right now, right, with the COVID year in between. You don't have any of them. They all transferred. And they didn't just transfer recently. You didn't get anything out of those 3 players. Like, I'm looking back at the last 2 years where depth in any of these recruiting classes would have helped the last 2 years. Last year's team was poised for a run if it was just a little deeper. You look at this 2018 class, that's one of the worst basketball recruiting classes you could possibly ever have. To land 3 guys and not get anything, absolutely anything. Joe Hedstrom ended up at Valparaiso, didn't do a whole lot. Ty Strickland ended up going to Temple and then transferred again to a lower level school. I don't even know where he transferred after Temple. He had a decent run at Temple. And then you had Joe Hedstrom, Taylor Curry, who's basically out of basketball. And then you go to the 2019 class. You got Tyler Wall, and that was it. Right, you got one guy. So in those two classes, you have one contributor. 2020, you get Lauren Bowman, who since transferred, Ben Carlson, who transferred. You do get Stephen Crowell and the Davis twins, right? So you get an NBA star, incredible Badger, but he's already gone. Then you get Crowell, who's been a really solid Badger. Jordan Davis, who's been a bench performer, but an inconsistent one. I don't know. I don't want to be tough on anybody, but I don't know if anybody even considers Jordan Davis a plus bench performer at this point in his career. I think that's probably a fair statement. And then, again, Lauren Bowman and Ben Carlson have both transferred. So you're not hitting at a high enough rate here. 2021, you have Hepburn. Yay, that's a good one. Then you have Ilver, who hasn't been able to play. You have Matthew Morris, who transferred. Hodges, who hasn't been able to play. 1 out of 4 is not good enough, especially when that one, all respect to Chucky Hepburn, who's been a really solid, I call him a middle tier Big Ten point guard, a really solid point guard. I think he brings a lot of winning attributes to a team that has more talent around him. But you can't go 1 for 4 in that recruiting class, right? And that doesn't mean the book is written on Ilver or Hodges, but they haven't been able to play up to this point at Wisconsin. And that's part of, we're talking, what's the depth issue at Wisconsin? Where did it come from? It comes from having guys on the roster that you recruited that haven't been able to crack the rotation. And then you fast forward 1 year, 2022, Asijan is an awesome hit, right? That's a 3-star recruit that plays like a 4 to 5-star recruit. Like, that's a monster hit. Credit to Greg Gard. However, it's the only player you have in that class. So if you look over the course of those 5 classes, you recruited 14 players. You have 5 left that are helping, right? You had 6 transfer out. That's you have 2 that haven't been able to find the court. Like that's the problem. The hit ratio hasn't been good enough. You can't go 5 classes and have half of those players, almost half those players transfer without making a big impact. Have a couple of them that can't crack the rotation. So it's what we've talked about. It's what we've talked about ad nauseum, right? You have to do a better job this offseason hitting on targets. You're going to have to hit the portal. And quite frankly, you're probably going to have to have some tough conversations with players, whether that means, maybe taking a player who's been on a scholarship that was a walk-on. Maybe here's where it gets really interesting to me. And we were talking about this with football, with John Garcia Jr., talking about some of the walk-ons that the football program is able to get, talking about how NIL can maybe be used as a weapon to give you more scholarships in theory, right? Because you can take a borderline guy and maybe just say, we're going to give you a big NIL deal, but we're going to call you a walk-on, right? A preferred walk-on. And then we're going to free up that scholarship somewhere else. I think you could see that happen this offseason with a couple players where maybe there's been a couple players who are walked onto this program who are on scholarship. Listen, spots are tight right now. If you look at the roster breakdown of this program, I wonder if they're going to take a couple of those scholarships away, compensate via NIL, and then you open up a couple spots. So I think tough conversations have to be had with this roster. But if you look back, it's pretty easy to see why this team lacks depth. It just, the last 5 years recruiting has been way too many misses. There's been some great hits. We've talked about them. Like Essegian was a great hit. Tyler Wall's a hit. Hepburn's a hit. There's been far too many misses and transfers. So I thought it was interesting to go back and just look at the recruiting. How did we get into the spot we are? By the way, if you look in the previous 5 years to that, like the hit ratio is much higher. Like the last 5 years have been a down period of Wisconsin Badgers recruiting. So yeah, definitely something that I thought was interesting. I think it's important to take a look at how you got here so you can fix how you get out of it. It's going to be a really interesting offseason. Let's see. Derek says, I'm a sad panda. Yeah, man. Not being in the in crowd with March Madness kind of stinks, low key. Do we deserve it? Yes. Do we have any reason to complain? No. Listen, I've already seen people kind of, like, Arizona State got in. We had a better resume. Listen, just me, if you want to complain about it, I'm all about it. We have no business complaining about it as Badger fans. This was a mediocre team that had tons of chances in close games and blew a lot of them. They couldn't win back-to-back games. They went out in the first day of the Big Ten tournament against a team that was, we have no leg to stand on to complain. Zero, none. That doesn't mean other teams had great resumes that got in, but we have, as Wisconsin fans, man, there's nothing that we have to really complain about. Shell says it feels so weird to not be in. Yeah, that I agree with. It's not cool, right? Like it sucks. It really stinks as a person that's accustomed to being there. No matter where we are and no matter what our expectations are going into the tournament, I'm used to being in that doggone thing. I'm used to filling out a bracket with Wisconsin on it and somehow mind gaming my way to them making the title. Yeah, it just stinks. Let's see. Austin Madden says, if Gard doesn't make the big dance next year, his seat has to be hot, right? Yes. 100%. I agree with that, Austin. 100%. Yes. I've been very consistent, I feel like, with my take on Greg Gard. No matter what happened this year, barring the wheels completely falling off, which I don't think they did. I don't think what happened this year was the wheels completely falling off. Barring the wheels completely falling off, I've been very consistent at Gard. He has earned the right to have another year. But if next year's not better, it's what I said in the first segment of the show. If you stack failures at Wisconsin, you can't go 2 years, not make the dance, and not have your seat get warm. So absolutely, I agree with that, Austin. Let's see. Jeffrey K said this wasn't a down season. A down season would be finishing 5th and getting a 12 seed. Not missing this whole dance. This was catastrophic. Jeffrey, man, thanks for the comment. I don't think it's catastrophic. This is probably where, and listen, feel free to disagree with me. I could be way off on this. Feel free to disagree. I just don't think it's catastrophic to miss the dance once in a while. This is a team, I mean, look at catastrophic. Minnesota had a catastrophic year, right? They won two Big Ten games, 3. I mean, I don't have the standings in front of me, but that's a catastrophic year. Wisconsin had a winning record, brought a couple really good teams to the wire, swept Iowa, and was on a bubble. They were on the March Madness bubble. Like, to me, that's just not catastrophic. It's a failure, though. Like, I think there's just maybe the wording is semantics there. So it is a failure. I don't consider it catastrophic. Shell says he already is on the hot seat. Yeah, maybe. Nothing Chris McIntosh does would shock me, right? But I don't think he's on that hot of a hot seat coming off of what he did last year. I think he has a little bit of a grace period here. But that grace period, listen, it's a thin bridge, right? If it doesn't turn around next season, yeah, like that could be it. And I'll be right there with you. Rob H says, I'd be nervous as guard. He should, yeah, like, and that's one of the things I've talked about, y'all. Like, I really believe that my dad said something to me one time that always stuck with me. He said, sometimes, it's good to be a little scared. Sometimes people perform their best when they're a little nervous. And, Greg Gard is going to go into this offseason with pressure and expectations put on him that he has no chance of not understanding. He knows that he has to change some things and adjust some things, and he's talked about it. So whether or not he can do it, that's the question. But I'm excited to see what happens this offseason. All right, a bunch more comments coming up. Really quick, I do want to talk about our friends of the show over at FanDuel. They are America's #1 sports book. They are our favorite sports book. And it's a great time to sign up if you're a new customer. New customers get the no sweat first bet, back up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line, point scores, three-pointers drained, rebounds, assists. They have everything there. And listen, I've talked about a lot about my son's bets for the futures, for winning the NBA Finals, for winning the Western Conference, taking a bit of a hit with Kevin Durant hurting himself in a layup line, essentially. Or maybe it's the best time to get on the Suns, right? Because the odds drop a little bit. Maybe the Kings, Nuggets bump back up. Listen, Durant's still going to be healthy for the playoffs. I'm still riding my Suns, but the Bucks are a great bet as well. Getting Jay Crowder at the deadline was a big win for y'all. I say y'all because I assume a lot of people listen to Bucks fans. You can bet anything you want: spread, money line, total points, player props, plus combine it all same game parlays to get even more money. Don't miss your chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, let's keep going here. A bunch of comments I want to get to. I probably will not get to them all, but let's keep going here. Preston Brosner says, next year and the offseason will make or break Gard. Agreed. I really think this is and P comes in and says, agreed as well. So, yeah, like, listen, next year and the offseason are going to be monstrous for Greg Gard. And I think it's interesting sometimes the sides of an argument we align ourselves with, right? Like, people kind of assume because I don't think Gard should be on a hot seat right now, and because I want him to get time, that I would somehow be like devastated if he has a bad next year, or had a bad year next year and is let go. Like, I'm not married to the guy. If he doesn't perform this offseason next year, like, I'm ready to move on too, potentially. At the end of the day, we all want what's best for Wisconsin. We're all Badger fans. So if he doesn't turn it around, if he doesn't show progress this offseason, if he doesn't react to this down year the way I think he is going to, then yeah, like, that's a really bad sign, and that might be it. But I do think, and again, I've talked about it, I feel like I'm beating a drum, but I really like the 23 class coming in. I think Gard is going to get somebody in the portal, and I think there's internal growth for certainly Connor Essegian. I think he can be an all Big Ten type of player. So I'm excited to see what next year's team looks like. They're going to be better than this year's team. I can almost certainly promise that. And if they're better than this year's team, which finished with a winning record and almost made March, you're talking about at least a mid-tier Big Ten team that's going to be like at the low end of the range, a 6, 7, 8 seed. That's not a bad year. So I am definitely interested in this offseason, though. And like many people have mentioned, if he doesn't find a way to turn it around, yeah, that's going to be it for Greg Gard. Bo Dragon, the NIT shouldn't even exist. Who likes watching sub 500 teams wallow around like scrubs? Listen, Bo, as always, man, I don't know. Like, I've never really watched the NIT, right? Like, there's a bit of morbid curiosity from me. So I'm a little interested just to see what, I don't know, man. Like, am I excited about the NIT? No. Do I like watching Badger basketball? I still do. Every game this year, for the most part, I found a way to get excited about. So like I just feel like Badger basketball's on. I'm going to enjoy watching it because I like some of the pieces on this team, and I just like cheering for that motion W. So, yeah, I don't know. I'll be interested. I'm curious to see what the NIT will look like. Christian Gross said, I would not accept the NIT bid because I genuinely think most of the people attending will boo the team off the court for not making the tournament. Who's going to be attending, right? Like, I don't know. Christian, you could be right. Aside from families and friends, right, who certainly aren't going there to boo, I couldn't think of any of my Badger friends who would be buying tickets to go attend. So, I don't know. I have no idea if anybody would go, if they would boo, if they would cheer. Again, covering the NIT, watching the Badgers in the NIT is kind of foreign to me. So I don't really know how excited, if at all, Badger fans would be. So we'll have to see. We'll wait and see. We don't even know if they're getting in the NIT, right? Like, there's a lot of NIT talk. They may not get there, which is incredible, right? How bad this year kind of went in a way. Kate Berry says, let's go NIT. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, I'm almost morbidly curious about it. I love watching the Badgers. I'll watch it. I'll watch it. I'll be excited. I'll talk about it. Bo Dragon will come on and say how terrible it is. And, the circle will complete. Kate Berry also says, but ready for Wisconsin football. Yes. We have a lot of football content coming up, y'all. This week, we have to put it off. We have a Brady Collins interview, hopefully Tuesday or Wednesday. We have to put it off this week. He should be coming up. John Garcia with another recruiting show coming up this week. We're talking about a certain 5-star defensive end visiting Wisconsin. So a lot of football coming up, getting ready for the spring. Not to mention, we're coming to do a live show for the launch. So I really hope to see as many people as possible there. We're going to give out some swag, try to get some players there as well. I think it's going to be really fun. So keep that in the back of your head as well. Stingray says, in Fick we trust. I absolutely agree there. Brian D said, who's recruiting these kids? Some blame has to be on his assistants. Yeah, I mean, listen, in the middle of that, you had the Orlando Tucker thing, right? And it's so weird, the Orlando Tucker thing, because it feels like a lot of people put that on Greg Gard. To me, that is all on Orlando Tucker, that whole weird, almost player mutiny. One of the things you have to do as an assistant coach is have your head coaches back, right? And yeah, I don't want to go too deep into that because there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of things that we'll never know for sure, but I think we can connect dots there, and we can connect dots and get to the point where we can confidently say Orlando Tucker was a terrible influence on that locker room, right? And it stinks because he's one of my all-time favorite Badgers. Not only did he have an incredible Badger career, he got drafted by my favorite NBA team. He was a son, a late first-round pick. I used to call him Orlando the Rim Rucker Tucker. Like, I love that dude. He followed me on Twitter once for like 3 days while I was doing some shooting drills when I was coaching. And it was like the coolest thing ever. Then he unfollowed me when I started talking about cheese curds. But long story short, like, I loved Orlando, but Greg Gard gave him a shot because he was there. It was a weird situation. And he kind of got stabbed in the back for that. And I've always, very frustrating. Geeb says, hopefully Gus and Blackwell can turn things around. Not by themselves, they can't. Geeb, and thanks for the comment. They won't do it by themselves, but I think they're part of the equation. I really, really think both play next year. I think Gus has a bigger role. Blackwell is going to be coming off the bench, and I think he can give you 5 to 10 minutes as an athletic 2 guard. I think other parts of the equation. So if you break down the math equation for me, for this offseason, I think it's Gus plus Blackwell plus development from Connor Sejan, Chucky Hepburn, Stephen Krell, plus a transfer portal guy equals a much better product next year. I think that's the equation. And I don't think any of that's super unrealistic. Sejan is going to be better next year. I promise you. Hepburn, Crowell, they're going to be incrementally better. Like, those dudes don't have a ton of development left, but they're going to be a little better from each of those. The margins aren't huge with some of these losses, right? We're talking about multitudes of games where we lost by 3, 4, 5 points. Those guys are going to be incrementally better. I think Gus and Black will get better, and I think Connor could take a potentially big jump. This team's going to be better next year. Now, how much better? And does that meet your standards? That's a whole separate question, and probably a whole question for another show. A bunch more comments in here. I really do appreciate everybody. Dennis Hughes says, if you're going to be in it, you might as well win it with the NIT. Yeah, I agree. Now, I don't know if that's in relation to my comment about I would like to see some tweaks and some younger guys play, or if you're responding to someone else in the chat. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be in it, and you better win the NIT, right? It would be a shame to go in there and get like beat in the first round of the NIT. That would be kind of the ultimate for this game. Let's see. Let's keep going here. Darkray, and again, I apologize if I butcher names here, said Gard needs to go. He's a good coach, but we need to do what we did in football. The program saw that Chris was never going to get the team to the national championship and went too fickle. Yeah, listen, I'm not going to say you're wrong. There were certainly people who doubted Chris McIntosh's ability to get an elite football coach, and he proved them wrong. So I just don't think Gard is in that same spot. And I think that's the biggest disconnect. But Dark Ray, man, I appreciate the comments as well. Let's keep going here. A bunch more comments. We're not going to get to everybody. I'm going to take a lot of your comments and put them in the next show we do. Badger Bournemouth says Bo Ryan got him the job. Yeah, with Greg Gard, Bo Ryan definitely had an exit strategy to get his boy hooked up. So, and I think that you're responding to a previous comment. But yeah, but listen, Greg Gard took that opportunity and turned that program around that year. Right now, I'm not saying that the loyalty extends forever for that, but Greg Gard also earned it off of that 1 year trial run. So Stingray says Gard needs a recruiter. Yeah, that is an interesting discussion. I want to get into a little bit on a future show as well, the recruiting department for the basketball side. I want to talk about that a little bit as well. All right, let's wrap it up there. One more, a couple more here. Preston Brodsner said if Gard gets fired, the Iowa State coach has ties to Wisconsin. We talked to him before. I don't know if he would make I don't know. Wisconsin, maybe. Like, that's an interesting one. He turned it around pretty quick there. Ryan23791 said felt more like Hepburn, Crowell, and Wall actually regressed this year. Doesn't get me excited for next year. See, I don't think Crowell regressed. Crowell put a lot of weight on this offseason, showed better ability as a rebounder and a passer, and he lost some of the touch on his shot, I think probably because he bulked up a little much. I expect him to shoot better next year. I don't think he regressed. Wall regressed. Wall regressed with more usage. He's just probably not that guy, right? Tyler Wall's probably not the guy that can go in and be that high of a usage guy. And I think we learned that this year. Bo Dragon says there's jump shooters in every playground on earth. Show me a slasher. Yeah. They need an athletic guy. Bo, for that, you and I agree completely. They need to go get an athletic guy in the portal or an athletic dude in this high school class, in the 24 class, whether it's Freitag. They need to upgrade the athleticism for sure. All right, y'all. Really do appreciate it. I'm going to take the comments I didn't get to. We'll do a bonus show and just address all those. We'll get some more people on and address it. I really do enjoy doing that. Let me know for the next John Garcia show if y'all want to do a live show. We'll put it up. We did one with John Garcia. He really enjoyed it. If you guys have football recruiting questions, that's an opportunity to just basically chop it up with John Garcia. Let me know if you want to do that. If not, we'll just have a normal John Garcia show. Anyway, on Wisconsin, really do appreciate everybody. Let's keep it going. We'll talk again tomorrow. A bunch of football content this week. Look for that coming up.